Happy Satoshi Sunday, everyone. Welcome back to segment episode number 8. I'm your host, Nikki. This is my dad at Global HODL on X. And this week we are back to discuss all things AI agents. Now, we did an episode on AI a few weeks ago. This time we want to hone in on what AI agents are and maybe talk a little bit about the difference between an agent versus agentic AI because they're two different things. And I did not know this until I started prepping for this episode a while ago. With that being said, we're going to keep things kind of focused around solopreneurship, building your sovereign stack in the agentic spring of 2026. With everything coming out about obviously OpenClaw, X is blowing up with just shock and pure impressiveness, the feeling of being impressed with how many things AI can do. So I'm not going to keep this too long. Dad, how are you doing? Are you ready to get into it?
Yes, I am excited for this conversation. Let's do it.
All right. Sweet. So why don't you start us off with really what is an AI agent for someone who has cannot differentiate ChatGPT versus OpenClaw? What is the difference?
Um, it's an interesting question, and to understand it, we first have to understand how AI has evolved, right? So about 3 years ago, when ChatGPT came to life, when everybody was able to get their hands on ChatGPT, it was essentially a chatbot. You ask something, it will respond. You don't ask anything for 2 days, it will go quiet. It will not bother you at all, right? So it was basically it was a Q&A. You ask a question, it gives you an answer. And for the next conversation, you have to start with another question or another topic, and then it will give you a response, right? So it will not respond until questioned, right? That's how chatbots work. What agents are doing is this is a world where you can give some level of autonomy to AI to do certain things. Like you can still define your guardrails and kind of controls around what AI can and cannot do, but it doesn't have to be prompted by you in time. For example, right, like the OpenClaw setup that we have at home, right, that we've been poking around with. Every morning at 6:30 in the morning, it goes on the internet, finds out all the topics that I have told I'm interested in, creates a summary, and pushes me a message through Discord. Right? I talk to it once, I don't have to remind it again. It does it every morning without fail. Right? When I see something else happening, so for example, over the weekend when this unfortunate event in the Middle East started, where US and Israel attacked Iran, I basically said, hey, I want to know what's happening in this area every morning, right? It went ahead and said, okay, got it. I'm going to add it. And since then, every morning I get an update on that too, right? So I don't have to every morning and say, give me my status, give me my morning brief. It just pushes it to me. Very simple example. But I told it once, it does it on a regular cadence, right? Now, somebody, who comes from a tech background, they will say, hey, there were always cron jobs that you could schedule that could do these repetitive tasks every morning. Great. That's exactly right, right? In common man's term, this is like an alarm clock. You go to your phone and say, I want to wake up every morning at 6 o'clock. It rings every morning, 6 o'clock. You don't have to go and set it up every day like you used to when you had those alarms where you had to go and kind of turn the knob and set it up, and then it will, ring in the morning. And every night, if you forget, it won't ring in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about this a little deeply, you start realizing it starts opening up a big canvas in front of you, right? What you can do with these AI agents because of this autonomy is an open canvas. Like it's up to your imagination, right? Today, if I want, I can tell my AI agents to do research on a topic overnight, right? Go scour through all the resources, create a comparative analysis report, use that in a report and kind of put sort of a business lens on and say this is whether this is a good business idea or not. If it is, it can write a spec for my coding agent and pass it on, and by the morning when I come, I wake up and I will have a working prototype ready for me to start poking around without me having to do anything, right? It's like I just have to plumb this pipeline once, and that's it. Okay? So that's essentially, if I were to, again, summarize it in one sentence, now you are giving autonomy to AI to do things and act on it autonomously without you
Mm-hmm.
having to prompt it. That's the key difference. That's a
Yeah.
big step forward.
Yeah, I think one way that I like to think about it is these agents, you use the word autonomy a lot, so we'll use autonomous loop. They run in kind of a pattern where, right, they start with scanning your environment, seeing what it is that the actual task is that you ask them to do. What is the actual goal? Then they plan for that. They break down the goal into smaller subtasks, right? And they're able to use tools. They're able to, access the internet, go search on the browsers. They can interpret code. Some of them can even access Lightning wallets, which is something that I saw you post about on X earlier this week, which I want to dig into in a bit. But coming back to what I was saying. And then they reflect, right? There are so many times when I've asked, I've asked our bot, I've asked Sandy to do something, and then it comes back and it's like, hey, this didn't work. Here's why it didn't work. I've pivoted and I've done this instead. That's not something that ChatGPT was able to do back in like 2022 or 2023, right? So this is such a big step forward in AI, and it feels like it's come so fast. I mean, is this something that you were kind of anticipating, or are you shocked by just how skilled these AI agents actually are?
Did I expect it 3 years ago? No. Am I shocked by how much progress they have made? Also, no, because I have been, trying to keep up with it ever since it started. And in like first 12 months of ChatGPT, it was becoming very, very evident that, the progress in AI is not going to be linear. It's going to be exponential.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we are seeing, right? And you're right in pointing out, earlier, if you were to ask ChatGPT something, and if ChatGPT couldn't do it, it would basically error out and say, sorry, right? But now they can find why something doesn't work, propose an alternative. To an extent, they actually can move forward or come up with multiple alternatives and give a recommendation like a human would do. The other most important thing is these AI agents have memory. ChatGPT
Also
did
true.
not have memory. Like whenever you started a new chat, it lost everything that you talked about. And if you did not manage your chats properly, if you started a new conversation in the middle of a chat, it will keep conflating the previous discussions, and it will keep polluting the answers. Like it happened to me so many times, like I'll forget to start a new chat, right? And it will keep mixing things. And if I start a new chat, it will lose everything I've told it in the past. But now it's not the case. Right now, if I were to explain my simple setup, so I have my one orchestrator, which is the brain of my open class setup, which I call Patrick. And then Patrick has kind of series of agents underneath. There is Crabs for coding, there is Neo for research, there is I think there is Squidward for doing financial analysis. There are a bunch of these things, and all I have to do is when I tell Patrick to do something, it knows, okay, this task is broken down into these 5 things. It requires research. It branches off to Nia. Nia goes, does research, creates a report, dumps it in a folder. Patrick picks it up, pass it on to another one. So it does all of that without me having to, tell everything. Now I can give it a long task, go off and do something else, and come back after 3 hours and have everything done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Earlier, it was not possible.
That is true. That is true. What are some of the tasks that you've been, delegating to these agents? Because we were talking about this a bit earlier this week, we texted about it as well, where we're talking about how chatting back and forth with an AI is probably the most basic of things that you can ask these agents to do. So I'm curious, what is your main use case for this system that you've set up?
I think it's multifold for me. Like the first basic one is keep me up to date on whatever is happening. Like I don't have time to look at everything that's happening. Keep me up to date. So that's the very basic. Before I set up OpenClaw, I had this thing set up with the N8N automation using my Perplexity APIs and whatnot, right? But now I've gotten rid of all that. OpenClaw does it for me. The other things that I like to do is, for example, my wife, she runs a real estate business. And in order to help her with her real estate business, I use my agents to do the market research, to do the comparative analysis on how should we position it, what should be our value prop, how can we serve our customers better, building up a website for the business, right? So a lot of these kind of things we keep doing. Like I keep offloading it to it. The other thing that I do a lot with with OpenClaw, I used to do it with other the Chat GPTs and Geminis of the world before OpenClaw came to life for me, was brainstorming. Like this is my thought partner. Like I keep churning ideas every day. Like something comes to my mind, it feels very good on surface. But if it was before AI, I would have spent weeks in doing research about it. Is there a demand for it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is this a real problem that people care about? If there is demand, if the problem is people care about, how big the market is. Like, is the market 20 people, 2,000 people, 2 million people, or 2 billion people, right? Depending on how big the market is, the opportunity becomes very, very different, right?
Yeah.
But now all of that can be done in matter of a couple of hours at best, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a couple of days, depending if the idea is a little bit too complex and whatnot. I use it for prototyping a ton, like to a point where I keep hitting my limits almost every day, especially on
Mm-hmm.
Claude. Claude is the
Mm-hmm.
most notorious one. I refuse to jump onto their API plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I would caveat with everybody, that be careful when you jump on the API plans. OpenClaw, depending on how you use it, what you set up to do, it might burn through tokens like crazy. And Claude code is one of and their 4.6 model is one of the most expensive model there is. So be mindful of how you're using it. And if you don't put guardrails, you might get a surprise bill that you might be not very happy about. So be careful
Are
with
you
that.
speaking
Not
from
saying it's
experience?
I'm not. I'm not, because I refuse to go onto the API plan.
Right.
But I have read multiple stories of people,
Okay.
and that's the reason I'm trying to figure out now, because there are a bunch of other models. So if you look at Claude, and Quen from Alibaba, Quen
Mm-hmm.
3.5, They are very, very good. Qwen is open source, reasonably cheap, right? Even if you want a hosted version, like their largest version, if you want it hosted through either to Olama or Open Router, um, that's much more reasonable than Claude, right? And you might actually take a hit in terms of performance, but you get a big mileage in terms of cost,
Yeah,
right?
that's fair.
So figuring all that part out, how do you set up the proper sort of fallback of these models, like where you have, like you can set it up a hierarchy such that you use the heaviest, most advanced model for the most complex tasks. But for everyday use, you use either a free model or a cheaper model. Like if for a regular conversation, I think if people use Gemini Flash 2.5, you're more than enough, right? And you probably, like, if you have Gemini subscription, you won't run out of credits. I can sort of guarantee you, right? Unless you're going super crazy with it. But then you can also bring in codecs. You can bring in, your open source model. Like if you have a decent enough machine and you have Olama set up, you can use models like Qwen, Kimi M2.5. Kimi
Mm-hmm.
M2.5, what I'm hearing is it does a fantastic job at writing, right? So great, Claude does a good job at writing too. But if something free can do 95% of the job, not bad. And at the end of the day, you're not outsourcing your writing. You're
Yeah,
outsourcing the editing of the writing or making the writing better,
that is true.
right? So like I'm figuring all that part out. Like how do I set those things up? How do I kind of make the best use of it? But to tell you the truth, like I'm not, I've not burnt my hands myself because being in the industry and I've used APIs, from OpenAI a lot in my career. I know how credits work. I know how fast credits get burnt.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very wary. And then when I was setting this up, I quickly realized Claude is not going to work for me in this setup. So Claude is reserved for very specific tasks because, as I said, I refuse to go to their max plan. I refuse to go to their API plan. I have a pro subscription. I believe that's more than enough for me, at least for the time being.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, Another thing I wanted to kind of talk about is so you've been through the things that you are using your AI agents for, which kind of similar to how I use mine as well. But I'm curious, right? You have been in the industry, you know what AI is capable of, you know what it's not capable of. You're a little more familiar, I'd say, than the average person is with AI. So from kind of observing things, how you've used the agents, maybe how people that you know have used agents that aren't as familiar with AI and how tech works. What are some of the things that these agents can be really really good at, and what are some of the things that you think they still need some work with?
Yeah. I think I can tell you some of the examples where I have used AI without going into too many gory details.
Mm-hmm.
AI is very good when it comes to translation, for an example, right? You have content in one language, but your customer base is more diverse and needs more languages. Like, sure, you can hire translators, human translators. Real good ones are expensive. It will increase your cost. And for that reason, a lot of companies basically say, you know what, screw it. We're going to keep it English, maybe one more language, and then don't go any further. AI removes that barrier, right? AI does a decent enough job for translations, right? I've used it tremendous time. Sure, it doesn't give you 100% accurate. It's much better than Google Translate,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if AI takes you 95% of the way, instead of hiring 10, 20, 30 translators, for example, let's say you are a business in Canada. Canada's a bilingual country, English and French. and 25% of Canada speaks French in the Quebec province. So if you were to offer your content in English and French, earlier you might need 10, 20 translators to translate everything to the best possible capability. Now you can use AI, and maybe one or two people can do sample checking and seeing are there any patterns they can find where AI is not doing a good job of translating. And once you find
Mm-hmm.
that, you can train AI again and think, hey, when you see this, don't translate like this, but translate like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then run the whole thing again, and the error is gone. All right. The first step, first use case. Second use case is AI does a good job of classifications, right? In simplest word, we also call it AI evals. Like when you're doing evaluation, this is pass, this is fail, this is fraud, not fraud, this is spam, not spam, right? This is good, not good. Well, however you're classifying, AI is great at that,
Yeah.
right? Um, AI is also great at kind of digesting large amounts of unstructured data,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you are a computer science student, you probably know that when you're building systems, when you're building data stores, the first instinct is, can we have a relational database where the data is the structure? There are database, there's tables, the rows, the columns, and
Yes.
whatnot. Right?
Yes.
Traditional pro code struggled dealing with unstructured data. Like you could not give it
Correct.
5 pages of text and saying, here is the data, tell me what you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
AI solves that problem. AI says, I don't care structured. I rather work better with unstructured. You give me piles and piles and piles and piles of text, I'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? AI is great at that. What AI is, at least in my experience, what I have not seen AI being good at is when it comes to numeric predictions, right? So, for
As in
example, if
math?
you're uh, not math as in, like 3 years ago, it couldn't do basic math.
That's true.
What I'm talking about is, let's say you have a predictive model, how your demand would be in Q4 2026.
Okay.
I haven't seen AI being super good at that. Maybe it was just a wrong model that we were using. I
But
might be
your
that.
model would be only be as good as you can train it, right? You'd still have to.
There's a difference, right? Now, if you start training the specific model, it's no longer the large language model from OpenAI. Like you can't basically just say, hey, here is all my
Yeah.
data and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So definitely there is an aspect of training, and I think that's where the world will go. So I'll come to that. I'll connect the dots for you. The other thing where, and I would not say if AI is not good at, but this is more about when it comes to critical decision making, and when you have to make decisions with minimal amount of data. That's where you
Mm.
need humans, right? Because human experience is something that AI cannot bridge yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? AI can work with things that it has seen. AI cannot work with things that it has not seen yet because it has not been trained on that yet, right? Now, you talked about training the AI models. I think there is I personally feel that all these large models, OpenAI, Gemini, Claude from Anthropic and whatnot, they will become commoditized, right? They would be used for a lot of stuff, but they wouldn't be used for everything. And
Mm-hmm.
it would not be one model is better than another one. Guaranteed not.
Okay, so all these debates that we have right now of Claude is better than Perplexity, and people pick their favorite one of the
I
lot,
think this
like
is just
that's just
it's
gonna.
just a race that
Okay.
what data are you trained on? Because and don't forget that at the end of the day, all these models are trained on the exact same data
Yeah, that's
on
true.
the entire internet,
Yeah.
right? So at the end of the day, they will all learn the same thing, especially in the world where AI is also generating a bunch of content that is training these AIs again. So I wouldn't be surprised they will eventually become just one. Like
Mm-hmm.
no matter which one you try, you get the same thing.
Yeah.
The key differentiator would be the data that you train AI with. That's where the gold is. Gold is not the AI model. Gold is the data,
It's the data. Yeah.
right? And for enterprises especially, like startups don't have a lot of proprietary data, but enterprises do. I think their edge would be they train a small language model. Like they don't need a model that does everything. They specialize a model to do one thing, two things, right? Something of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the real value is. And that's how we're seeing the market shift too, right? Over the last few months, the major advancement is not much about, Anthropic's new model is better than ChatGPT or Gemini is better than this and whatnot. Sure, there is whenever a new model posts, like when I announced the GPT 5.4 coming out today, sure, there is a hype 1 or 2 days,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not where the real value is. The real value is, did somebody build anything on top of these commoditized models that is really good at doing one thing, right? Or two things.
Yeah. So is this like those? I don't know if you've heard of things like Sora AI, where I'm sure you know that it's a study tool. So do you think that's the future of where AI is headed?
Um, AI, the future is AI would eventually make every workflow more efficient,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think the only workflows that would not require more efficiency are the ones where we value human connection a lot.
Like hospitality.
So
Yeah.
why am I saying this? Let's be brutally honest with ourselves. And I posted about this on X yesterday, I believe. I think a lot of people, so lot of the white collar jobs, especially, and I think you can probably even take it to blue collar too, but especially white collar jobs, they exist because of inefficiency in the system, right? They do, like, a lot of these things would not exist if the systems were efficient.
Do you
For
have
example,
examples? Yeah. Okay.
sure, like, um, when you go to a hospital, you walk into the hospital, you go to the check-in counter, somebody checks you in, you sit, somebody pushes that information to another person. Then another person will come out, take you in, take you to another counter where will they start doing your regular, vitals. They'll check your blood pressure, your temperature, your height, your weight, whatnot, right? Then they'll take you to another room. Then the doctor will come, or maybe even the nurse will come. She might give you the whatever the shots that you're due before the doctor comes and sees you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we really need all those people? Do we really need that check-in counter? Like, it could very well be done by AI. What value that person added that AI could not do? You're not going there just
True.
because the person at the check-in counter is super nice, so I like talking to that person. No, first of all, nobody likes to going to a doctor office. It's a necessity that we all have to do, but we don't do it because we want to do. We do it because we have to do it. So that check-in counter person is not adding any value. And I'm sorry if I'm kind of disappointing and making anybody upset, but that can be extended to any type of work. A
Yeah,
lot
it
of
can be
work.
extended to what we do, right?
Yes,
How valuable is a junior software developer in this era of working?
yes, and think about this. Like, why did a lot of software had to be built in the first place? It was trying to make things efficient,
Yeah.
but then software itself became inefficient.
Yeah.
because everybody built their own silos. And now this system cannot talk to that system. They've stored the data in one format. They stored the data in another format, and they can't talk to each other. So there's a third software
Yeah.
that
People start
basically
building more and
does
more
just
software to
transformations.
connect. Yeah. Yep.
This can be applied anywhere. Majority
Yeah.
of the jobs exist because of inefficiencies in the system,
Mm-hmm.
right? Take our government for an example, right? People will say we'll keep coming back to the government, but that's the truth, right? Why does our tax code has to be this complex and this big?
Yeah.
Why?
Because
They
I
create
mean,
this
they create
inefficiency
it, and then they
that
keep seeing this
creates
problem and
jobs
this
for
problem.
CPAs. Not just that, they create jobs for CPAs, tax attorneys, companies like Intuit,
Mm-hmm.
TurboTax, right? H&R Block, and bunch of others. If you simplify this, the tax code itself, all of these will go away. Let's say if the US government tomorrow goes and says, we are going to a simple flat tax structure,
Mm-hmm.
no deductions, no nothing. If you make less than X, you pay nothing. If you anything more than this, you pay a flat 10%. Nobody needs a CPA. Nobody needs TurboTax, right? All that garbage will go away. And the government simply can say, okay, we know you made this much, and they can actually deduct it on the source itself, so they don't even have to worry about anybody filing a tax return. Right?
Yeah.
So, and these examples can go n number of ways. I strongly believe majority of the jobs exist because of the inefficiencies in the system. Right? AI is going to go after majority of those inefficiencies.
It
The
already
only
is.
efficient it is, and it's going to keep going further deeper into that. And then we'll see things like today morning, I was reading somewhere, I think Polymarket posted that New York is, there's a bill they're proposing in New York where they're trying to ban AI to be used in law, healthcare, and a lot of other places. Like you as a person, as an end user, cannot ask AI questions about health or law or whatnot. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, which
Like,
that's never
what are
gonna
you trying to do?
pass.
You're basically trying to increase in efficiency so AI cannot use. But guess what? This is a recipe for disaster.
It goes more than that. When have people ever been happy when you try to tell them what they can and can't do?
And that, yes. But what usually happens when you say citizens of this area or residents of this area can't do certain things, but the entire world can? What happens?
Mass migration.
Either mass migration or this geography just gets doomed.
Yeah.
Right? Or that these people will live in misery. Right? So I don't know, like why governments keep thinking this way, but politicians will do what they think benefits them.
Incentives. Always comes back to incentives.
Correct. Always comes back to incentives. So just to tie this together, where I was going with this is, so what I posted was, if people are fooling themselves if they do not realize that a lot of the job, in most cases, their job exists because of an inefficiency in the system, and AI is going to remove that inefficiency. Right? So your choice is, you can stay in denial and be displaced.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn AI, you'll still be displaced, but now you're skilled to do something else. There is no third option. Right? Displacement is coming. What rate? Who gets displaced first? 5%, 10%, 20%? I don't know. Nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But we saw what happened last week. Jack Dorsey at Block laid off about 50% of the people. Right? Today I was reading Oracle. They are in talks to lay off about 14 to 16,000 people. And guess what? If all these companies, like the big hyperscalers, they are trying to invest $600 billion in building the infrastructure this year alone,
Mm-hmm.
then money has to come from somewhere.
That is true.
Money doesn't grow on trees. It has to come from somewhere, because the other thing is, like, these are public companies. If they
Yes.
borrow more, investors penalize them more.
Yes.
So they'll say, you know what? Okay, we are borrowing more. Our revenues are growing, but we are also cutting our cost. Our recurring cost. Employees are recurring cost.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing, which I wasn't thinking that way, but I was listening to Jody Visser last weekend. And what he mentioned was employee salaries are about $60 trillion, which is about half of
Oh,
GDP,
wow. Okay.
of world GDP.
Yeah.
Now, if that is threatened by AI, it's going to create big problems for politicians. Big problems, right? Sure, we can all say, oh, the businesses' revenues are growing up. But at the end of the day, who's going to buy products from these businesses if they don't have income?
True. That is true.
So people have to connect the dots there, and think from the perspective their job would not look anything like, they may not have a job in 12 months, or if they still have the job, it might not look anything like what they have, or unless they are working in a highly regulated or a government job. Like if you are in a public sector job, if you are a metro
Yeah.
bus driver in San Francisco or New York, you don't have to worry. You're safe for 30 years.
I want to talk about this idea of obviously entrepreneurship, right? I think in recent years, with the age of social media, we've seen so many people start creating. We've seen so many people kind of be self-employed. What do you think of the future of entrepreneurship with AI? Because I see a lot of content of discussion on the internet about how essentially you can build a business, you can build a product with just you and maybe 4 or 5 different agents. Maybe it's just you and one agent. So is solo entrepreneurship where we're headed in terms of the job market?
I strongly believe so. There will be some employees, but only for select few businesses. I don't think there will be as many large businesses
Mhm.
in 10, 15 years as they are today,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, we talked a little bit about this a few weeks ago when we were doing that AI episode, which if you're listening to this and you are intrigued with, the AI discussion, definitely check that one out after you finish this episode because it's a great conversation. But coming back to my point here, we talked about how there will be a need for people, and this might be in different sectors. Like we're going to need people to transition businesses from a non-AI model to an AI model. We're going to need people are still going to need to be employed. And then we started talking about, what about those people who aren't creator minded, who aren't intrigued by the idea of building something themselves, right? So and we talked about where they would fall in this economy of everyone being self-employed.
Yeah. So I think there are it can pan out multiple ways, right? One of them is what Elon Musk talks about, universal high income and whatnot, right? I can see that happening.
But it's very
And
unlikely. We did the math on this.
I know, and then my thinking has been evolving a little bit on this.
Okay.
It will only work if AI puts such a huge deflationary pressure on everything.
Don't you think that no matter how deflationary AI can get, we have governments that will be equally, if not more, inflationary?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going there, right?
Okay.
For a minute, in a hypothetical world, let's say AI puts so much deflationary pressure, then prices of things start falling off a cliff. A average American home comes down from whatever $450,000, $460,000
Mm-hmm.
to $20,000
Yeah. Okay.
because the cost of construction goes away completely. It's all humanoids. Cost of production of lumber practically goes down to zero because humanoids are making it. So everything basically keeps falling off a cliff, right? And they can build in the areas where we have not done any constructions right now because people need to live where they can go to work, because now nobody needs to go to work. They
Mm-hmm.
can go live anywhere, because the cost is going down. Now governments can keep printing just to make sure that there is a little bit of inflation. So there might be a big shock, but then a little bit of inflation because of money printing, and that is covering up the cost, right? So imagine a world where $16,000 that we calculated the poverty line income
Yes.
becomes plenty to live in the US because the cost goes down. Now, the big unknown in this is, what is the one-time cost of that big shock, right? If the house cost drops by 99% or 90%, what does it do to all the wealthy, and what does it do to the banking system of the country?
What does it do?
Majority of the homeowners, like think of all the boomers who bought their homes at $40,000, $20,000, 40, 50 years ago. The home is today at $1 million, $2 million, $1.5 million, 800K, whatnot. Their home goes back to the same price where we bought it 45 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They overnight go from I'm wealthy to I'm broke.
Yeah.
Their everyday living may not get affected because cost of things have fell too. But they are toast on the sense, like they'll emotionally be broken. Now there is another generation, which is our generation, which bought homes at those high prices. We have mortgages at those prices. Now, let's say if I have a mortgage of 500K and my home becomes 50K, what is the incentive for me to pay off the mortgage?
Absolutely
Zero.
nothing. Yeah.
Zero, right? Here's a home, take it away.
Yeah, exactly.
What does it do to the bank?
Bankrupts the bank.
Yep. So,
And this is what
I think
happened in 2008, is it not?
yeah, that was the trigger where people started saying we're not paying. And the problem is not just banks, because banks are smart. Those bastards have been doing this for long enough. They don't sit on that garbage. They package it up and they sell it back to people who are living off of fixed income, the mortgage-backed securities and all that
Mortgage-backed
stuff,
securities. Yep.
right? Where do all these mortgage-backed securities sit? In the insurance portfolios, in the pension plans and whatnot. So that it's like, so that is one unknown. If somehow somebody can figure out a way to basically say, as one-time shock, will absorb it somehow, right? I can see that word happening. Unlikely, highly unlikely still.
Because
Still very highly
realistically,
unlikely.
how would you absorb this shock, right?
The one way to do it is basically default. Everybody defaults on the loan. Everybody resets their
Everyone does a whole
books.
hard reset. Wow, okay.
Practically.
Worldwide reset.
Right? So think about this. Like everybody owes to everybody else, and everybody's willing to say, okay, I'll write it off. I have to just offset my books.
Yeah.
And nothing changes in real life. Exaggeration, not like a lot of people will get hurt,
Yeah.
right? But that's one way, right? In that world, people who will benefit are the ones who do not have any debt.
What about the debt? The people that are owed lots of debt.
Those are toast.
The ones who are, oh, that's true. Yep. Yep.
Anybody who's around the debt is toast.
Yeah.
Why? Right? Let's say person A has a mortgage of 500K from bank. The house value drops to 50K. No incentive for the person to basically say, I'm going to keep paying. Right? They will default. They will lose the house. So they lost.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They'll have to figure out where to live, whatnot. Bank lost this 500,000 worth of asset on their books, which suddenly have to be marked to market at 50K, and then the 450K becomes a loss and whatnot, and they have to auction it and whatnot. So they lost. Both of these lost. Right? So who will benefit? Somebody who's willing to scoop that home at $50,000, maybe even negotiate it down and say, I'm going to scoop it for 40K. Right?
The ultra wealthy.
But think about this. If we are living in a deflationary environment, why would anybody want to pick it? Because it will become cheaper.
Yes.
In future.
That's true.
Right. So there are a lot of things. So that's highly unlikely, but I can see there is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, it's not going to be an easy path. It's not going to be happy path. Unless Elon sees something that I don't see, and I'm sure, like he probably thinks of a gazillion things at any given point in time. And as people say, he's N of one, like there is nobody else like him in the world. Other than that, like I don't see a easy path for governments to just print money and hand out payments. There will be still some people, like there are still today, like a bunch of people in America who are just living off of welfare, and a lot of people in the world, right? But the reality is, like, if I try to envision the world 15, 20 years down the road, I fail to see S&P 500 being the same companies that they are today. Or even S&P 500 look anything like what it looks today.
Okay, interesting.
Right? The reason being, like, for example, the 7 largest companies of S&P 500. If they keep doing laying off people because they have to keep making capital investments, their revenues may not be going up.
Mm-hmm.
Or their revenues might be going up, but their employment is not going up.
That's true.
Right? And guess what happens when you are making capital investments? You are paying less taxes on this because that is, a capital expenditure that can be, amortized and depreciated and whatnot, whereas employees cannot be. Right? So, bunch of those things. And in that world, people will have to find something where they can generate income. And the only way to generate income is by adding value to others, right? And if you try to go back a little in the past and you see in the last 10, 15 years, there is a rise in gig workers. There's a rise in this hustle culture, a side project or a side hustle. Somebody's driving an Uber, somebody's doing DoorDash delivery, somebody's doing Instacart delivery, somebody's doing something of that.
Drop shipping businesses.
So I think I think there is a reason behind. Sure, there is definitely an aspect of, people can't make the ends meet.
Yeah.
Right. So they have to do something on the side. But all these things are kind of popping up on the side, which is basically like, if you are a Uber driver, you're practically a solopreneur.
Yeah.
You might not see yourself that because you are still giving, still working through a big, large tech company's platform. If the platform doesn't work, you don't have any work and whatnot. Sure. But practically, you are a solopreneur, right? What Uber is doing is essentially making, just creating those matches of, there's a driver who's willing to drive, there's a passenger who needs to go from place A to place B. Let's match them. Right? And for that, they take whatever 30-40% cut they take. Right? But I think that trend is very telling. Right? A lot of people, like I know I've spoken to a few people who don't want to go to a full-time job because this gives them better control over how they want to use their time.
Yes.
Like they can drive when they want, they not drive when they don't want. Unless you have to be in office at 8 a.m. You cannot leave before 6 p.m. We don't care if your child is sick, right? So like a lot of that kind of crap. So I think if you look at both of those things, I think it's very telling to me, at least, that there will be a rise of solopreneurs, people doing things to add value, and in return they'll make income, and then they have to figure out ways of how they can use that income to live.
Okay. We've done this before in an episode, but I think it might be helpful to do it again. Let's say not let's say, because I am 20 years old, but I'm 20 years old. I have a big, big interest in writing. Let's take writing, for example. And I'm looking to monetize that, and I don't have much time because I'm in uni, right? How do I get a side hustle around writing ready to go in, like, let's say, like 5 days?
Yep. So what do you need to sell writing? You need to have a couple of things. You first need to have a topic that you are interested in, that you are passionate about, you have enough knowledge on, you're willing to do research on. Simultaneously, this needs to be a topic that people care about, that they're willing to read. Want to be like, you can be passionate about a topic that nobody else cares about, right? So like bunny rabbits with 7 colors and triangular, ears, and they, fly on the moon. Sure, you can write it, but I don't know how many people would want to read it. Maybe there are people, like, call me crazy if people are, but anyway, that aside, the point is you want to write something that you are good at and people care about. That's the first core thing. Second thing is you need to be good at writing, right? The third thing is you need a distribution channel to push this writing and put it in front of people, right? 25 years ago, if you wanted to be a writer, or I'll even go 30 years ago, before even blogs were a thing, right? If you wanted to do writing, the only choice you had was be really good and try to come in, go work for a magazine or a publication, or write a book, then spend a ton of money convincing some publisher to publish a book. With introduction of internet, that hurdle got crossed and the barriers to entry dropped. Like you could start your blog.
Yeah.
Like all you needed was a domain, a hosting service, throw in a WordPress website, go. Right? A few years down the road, those WordPress sites also started getting replaced by things like Substack. Right? Substack became a sort of a distribution channel where it kind of took the aspect, it's not just a blog, it's a newsletter, but has a kind of blog tied to it. So it gives you a distribution you have on the internet, but it also sends out an email and whatnot. And so I
Yeah.
started building community around it. Right. So they gamified the whole thing and kind of gave you that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So internet solved that problem. What AI solves is it can help you become a better writer. It can help you research the topics that people are interested in. And it help you doing all the research to enable you to do the good writing on that topic. Like it can help you find all the data and whatnot. And lastly, it can help you craft the piece, the final piece that you can put in front of people. You still have to do the heavy lifting of synthesizing your thoughts along with all the data, how you want to tell the story. It's your story. Like when people write a book, you don't take the book to the editor and say, you don't scribble anything or just say, you write it for me. Sure, there are
Yeah.
ghostwriters that could do that for you. But at the end of the, you'll try to do the best you can and then take it to the editor, and the editor will do the final editing and say,
Yeah.
help you make it better. AI can
Even with
help you do that.
ghostwriting. Yeah. Even
Yeah.
with ghostwriting, right? You sit down with the ghostwriter and they try to get your thoughts. They're just putting the words down. So it's
Yep.
essentially you're just
You can
replacing that with
narrate the whole
AI.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Still has to be your story, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is interesting. So you had a blog back in 2023 and you tried your hand out at writing and everything. If you were comparing to what it looked like to start that then to what it could look like to start that now, how do you think, the process would have gone? Do you think you would have had different reception, different efforts put in?
So I think that in my case specifically, just so people know, my priorities shifted. And that's the reason I stopped writing on that. That blog was primarily focused on the FIRE movement, the financial independence, retiring early concept. So I was thinking purely like a traditional investor, index funds, real estate, combination of all that, how I can put all of that and how do I build myself towards early retirement. Sure, there are some lessons there that I still find useful in the Bitcoin era, like teaching the kids, for an example, financial literacy. The basics of finance doesn't change depending on what asset you use. Basics still stay the same, right? Buying more assets, minimizing your liabilities, managing your leverage, like all those principles stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
That is the reason, once I shifted my focus towards Bitcoin, I basically said, this doesn't align very well with what I was planning to do there. So I kind of halted that. I am constantly thinking how I can combine these two things. And as I've told you earlier as well, I strongly believe Bitcoin is not for my generation, right? Bitcoin is not going to help me retire early. Bitcoin is not going to help anyone in my generation retire early unless they're already pretty wealthy and they can go and buy 1,000 Bitcoins today or 100 Bitcoin today, and then they basically say, if you could buy 100 Bitcoin today, you're sitting on $7 million.
You're
You
ready
could
to
retire
retire.
anyway.
Yeah,
Anyway, right?
exactly.
But that said, I think there is a world where I could marry these two things together. But to your point, with all the tools that I have access to today, writing for that would be much, much, much easier. Like earlier, when I was writing, even I have to create an image, I have to go to Canva, find different things, put them together, spend
Pull up
hours.
the
And I'm
stock
not a designer
images.
by any. I'm not a designer by any. Now I can just go to, you know, the Nano Banana and or go to Google Whisk or Chat GPT for an example, and just prompt it. I need an image like this, and it throws something. Most of the times, it's good in first shot. If you go back and forth multiple times, you can get what you need, right? And I found Whisk to be better out of all. Like, Nano Banana can start getting wonky at times, and once it goes on that path, and then there's no coming back. Like, you basically have to restart the whole thing,
Yeah, that's true.
right? And ChatGPT does that too. Like, it will, if you try to tweak it too much, it will start throwing things on off its own, and then like it just doesn't look anything like what you want. But nonetheless, like, that's one example. Like, I could do things that took me multi hours. Now it will take me minutes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Earlier, when I was writing anything, I'll have to go and do a bunch of research, finding out, like, if I were to use any numbers, I have to find all the reports where those numbers were shared, read them, analyze them, make sure I link them. Now one of my agent can find all that for me and keep it ready for me and during the night. And when I wake up, all the data is ready, and I can just next morning I can
Yeah.
start writing.
Yeah.
So a lot of those things can become much, 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 much easier. Right. When I started my blog, I was on WordPress. Then I moved it to Substack after I've learned about Substack. So I know coming on Substack, I can push my distribution channel is much bigger. And with, tying it with the things like X, there is so much more, right? And this is another thing that AI and internet can help you with. The same content, once you create one piece of content, you can use AI to just change the format of that content for another distribution channel. What do I mean by that, right? Once you have let's say you wrote a piece of article on a topic, now you can take this because this is your story, and you can work with AI to create a script for a video,
Yeah. From
right?
there, you can break it
You don't
down
have
into an X
you
thread.
don't have
Yeah,
to
it
write
keeps
the whole
going.
script yourself because your story, this is the absolute truth. AI can help you create a nice story out of it, and you can quickly film it. Then AI can help you edit your videos. Right? There are tools out today which can do a lot for you that earlier took, like, you had to know, Photoshop and other Adobe
Yeah,
tools,
it's
which were like,
so easy to generate B-roll now. You go into Whisk, I
yeah,
need this, animate it, and you got a little video.
yeah,
It's
exactly,
incredible.
exactly, exactly. So there is definitely a lot you can do in today's world. Like, if anybody is not doing anything, that's on them. Like, they can say all they want that, oh, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this. I think it all boils down to your motivation level of, are you really driven to do something?
Yeah. When British HODL was on the podcast 2 weeks back, I asked him at the very end to give a roadmap of what he would do if he was, someone who's 20 years old right now to start monetizing and making some quick money. I'm going to ask you the same question. Eh, you're in college, you're 20, you just want some money. What do you do?
I think in today's world, making money is not hard, to be honest,
Okay.
right? Um, and just go back to what we were talking about. Just due to the gig economy, you can make money. Like, if you want, let's say you are in college, you have a car, you can start doing some DoorDash deliveries, right? You do 5 deliveries a day, you'll make 15, 20, 30, $50. You
15, 20, 30,
do
$50.
whatever, it depends on the
Yeah.
order size,
Yeah.
how far it is. Like, I don't know what you make. I've never done it, so I don't know exactly. But what I'm saying, you'll make anywhere between $10 and $50 a day.
Mhm.
You do it 7 days a week. You have somewhere between, let's say, 100, 200 average. That's one channel. And it doesn't take a lot of time. Like, you could work like 2 hours in the evening, do 5, 6, 10 deliveries for dinner, come back, eat your dinner, do what you need to do. And in the evening, you could, do the writing. Like, writing is one way to make money. You could do podcasts. You can start your podcast, right? You could start tutoring. You could, like, if you have more time, when you live in a place where there is bunch of either city traffic that needs to go from one place to another, you can do a lot of few Uber rides. Like, so Rajat Soni, if you've heard his story, he used to drive Uber, and in the Ubers he used to listen to all the Bitcoin content, right? This was between he left his CFA job and became a full-time Bitcoin content creator and mentor and coach and whatnot, right? So there are a bunch of these things. And if you are really entrepreneurial, you could build a business. Like, you could build any type of business using AI,
Yeah.
right? The key thing is, once you put your mind towards, I want to make some money, right? You have human capital and you have the money capital. You
Yeah.
can use both of them to make money,
Yeah.
right? But money is not going to be made by anybody who just sits in the library or in the cafe and thinks, "Yo, what can I do? I wish I could make money." It was much harder when I was in college. There was no Uber, no DoorDash, no Instagram, no YouTube. Like I had no choice. Like, only choice I had is I could go work at a cafe or a restaurant and be a server. That was the
Yeah.
only option I had.
I do agree that, it's never been easier than it is now. And I think with AI agents especially, it is 100% possible for you to be going to class and have AI doing something that is making money for you in the background.
Yep. And since we're talking about AI agents, one thing also I want to clarify for a bunch of people is, do not fall into the traps that people on social media are pushing for. You don't need a Mac Mini. You don't need a Mac Studio to run OpenClaw. You can run it on a old laptop. You can run it on a tiny PC, an old PC era. Do not run it on your main computer. That's key. That's primarily for security, because you do a lot of other things, a lot of your personal stuff, and you don't want AI agents to have access to everything.
Yeah.
Especially do not put your AI agents on the computer that you have your Bitcoin wallet on. Do not.
Yes.
Do not.
Yes. Yes.
But you don't have to go buy a $500 Mac Mini or a $2,000, $3,000 Mac Studio or a new MacBook. No, you do not need that. Right? All you need is something that can stay on 24/7, and it's preferred if you have at least one subscription that you can connect to. OpenAI ChatGPT's Pro subscription links pretty well. I have not hit the limits, and I use it all day long, right? I have not hit the limits yet. So $20 a month is not a bad deal. Claude, definitely, as I was saying earlier, Claude hits limits, but I have not hit the limits using ChatGPT. Spending $20 a month versus spending $2,000 to buy a Mac Mini, and you still have to spend $20 a month, is very different. So do not run, because a better hardware is not going to make your work better.
That is true.
Your thinking, your structure, your hard work is going to make your work better, not the hardware your system runs on. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting note because it really has never been easier than it is right now. And I think that one misconception that, I see and I feel right now in you're young, you want to make money, is that I have no time. I have no time. I'm super busy with classes. Come back and it's like some people are working. I'm doing the content thing, and then it's like, shoot, what else? Where do I have, time to breathe in the day? But with AI, setting something up is so easy. So we've heard, we in investing, you hear a lot about learning to make your money work for you. how would you make AI? How would you mix AI into this so that you can use AI to make the money work for you? Does that make sense? Like where I'm trying to go with this?
I think so. Let me paraphrase what I heard, and you can tell me if I
Yeah.
understood
Okay.
correct. Right. I think your question is, as a 20-year-old, how can you use AI to make money, and then how you can use AI to grow your money?
Yes. Yes.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Um, I think we talked plenty about how you can use AI to make
To make
money.
money. Yeah.
I will summarize it in simplest form. Anything you want to do to make money, think hard about, can AI make you more effective? Because being more effective
Okay.
usually makes more money, right? For example, you are a content creator. Without AI, you might have been able to churn out one video a week. With help of AI, you can churn three, right? Or two or one. Like if you were doing one in 2 weeks, now you can do one in a week, right? Depending on whatever schedule you are on, AI can make you more efficient, right? Um, so that's the underlying thing. If you want to make money, see what are your strengths and how you can apply AI to your strengths and become more efficient, more effective, because that will attract more money. The second related thing is, and I think that's where a lot of young people are falling in trap of. They want to make money, but they want to make a lot of money in a very little time. I think that's the catch. When they look at, oh, I'm going to do a Uber ride and I'm going to make $10 in this Uber ride. They're like $10 for driving 30 minutes. I'm not doing it. That's nothing. But they forget this $10, if they could save and invest. I'm not even talking about Bitcoin right now. If they could just invest at 10%, right? And leave it for 35 years, guess how much that would be, right? 10% is double every 7 years.
Yeah.
So in 7 years, it's 20. In 14 years, it's 40. In 21 years, it's 80. In 28 years, is 160. And in 35 years, is 320. So 32x. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But problem is people want to make money right now.
Yeah.
No. So the key challenge in today's internet short attention span economy is people want to get rich now. Nobody wants to get rich slowly, right? So that said, how you can use AI to grow your money, there are plenty of ways, right? AI could be your analyst. Like if you are one of those investing geeks who wants to look at charts all day, I don't recommend that. I don't
The
recommend that. Not
traders
a
do
financial,
the forex traders.
any
Wow.
trader, right? Majority of the traders cannot beat the market. They cannot beat the market. Simple, right? So I do not recommend that. I would say keep your investing simple. My recommendation, not a financial advice, but my recommendation is study Bitcoin. And if you believe that Bitcoin is what we say it is, maybe you'll realize that that's the best place to park your money. But nonetheless, if you don't want to believe in Bitcoin, that's fine. Go put money in S&P 500. Focus. Making money work for you is giving time to money, right? And I think Fidelity did a study back in the day, And they found there are two types of people in number one and number two spot whose portfolios did best. Guess
Okay.
who the number one was?
People like Warren Buffett, the
No,
holders, I guess.
these were dead people.
Oh,
The portfolios were left behind because nobody was doing anything to the portfolio. Portfolio was just sitting and money was doing its work.
really?
Yeah, because
I guess that makes
people who are
sense, yeah.
alive, they will go and tinker around. Oh, this year, this
Yeah,
thing not
that's fair.
doing.
That's fair. That's fair.
People were dead, families
Yeah.
didn't know. So people who were dead, their portfolio did the best. And guess the number two were? Nurses. Because they didn't have time. They were dealing with patients in the operation theater and they completely forgot about these things.
Oh, okay.
So the underlying story here is you don't need anything fancy for your money to work. You just need to give time to your money to make money for you, right? Give your money a job and give it time for that job to be completed. Nothing fancy, right? You can create all sorts of analysis tools using AI and whatnot. None of that is useful, right? Now you could reach a stage where you basically say, "Hey, I need to plan." Like you could use AI to do planning. For example, you are young, 20-year-old, you want to build life goals, where you say, "Okay, in n number of years, I want to get married, I want to have a child, I want to buy a home, and I want to save for my retirement." This is what my income looks like today. I would plan, like I expect for it to grow at this stage. How should I invest? How much should I invest in this bucket? How much so doing all sorts of planning, AI can make it super simpler. You don't have to pay any financial analyst or wealth manager. They are not worth a single penny.
Yeah.
So do not give anything. You can brainstorm all you want with AI. You can run all sorts of simulation doing your what if scenarios. What if I do this? What if I put $100 more here? What if I put $100 less here? Right? How would that change my equations? Like doing all that is easy. But do not think of AI. AI doesn't have a magic wand that will let your money grow faster. Not going to happen.
Good point.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, there are
Yeah, I
some
think
jobs that only time can do.
yeah. I do think that's like a really important disclaimer to make, right? AI is very helpful. AI is such an easy way to improve your productivity, to become more efficient. But AI can only do what you ask it to do. It's not some like not end all be all. It's not
So,
some
so
magic
here
wand that
is
you
a
can wave.
here
So
is a
it's
simple contrarian point of view. Just to like, if anybody is thinking how they can use AI to grow their money faster, if AI knew how to do that, why would it make money for you?
that's true. That's a very good point. Yeah. And this is the disclaimer that not disclaimer, but this is the lens with which I try to present AI on this channel. And we do this, I think, pretty well in this segment. AI is just a tool. It's just what you tell it to be. And so obviously you can use AI to do your homework for you. You can use AI to get through your university degree. You can use AI to vibe code a bunch of stuff, or whatever use case you have for AI, you go for it. But learning to make money with it, learning to work towards the goals that you really want to do, I think that that's something that it still comes down to your mindset. It still comes down to who you are as a person, what it is that you can come up with. And this is something that I don't see much of on social media at all, right? Because there's this huge sentiment online of how AI is making people dumber. And while, yes, I do agree with that a little bit, I also think that the people that are using AI to profit the most are the smartest people on the entire planet.
So here's the thing. The way I see it is AI is not going to make a dumb person smart. AI is going to make a smart person smarter, right? AI is not going to make a smart person dumb, but AI is going to make a dumb person dumber, right? It all boils down to how you think, how you operate, and how you use AI. You can use AI to your advantage, and you can use AI to your disadvantage. If you are letting AI make decisions for you, AI isn't losing anything.
That's
You are
true.
the one who's becoming dumber.
That is
And if you're
also true.
using AI to your advantage, if you're using AI to become more effective, more productive, being able to do multifold more things that you could do earlier, guess who's benefiting? Not AI, you. Right? So it comes down to that. And again, on the internet and in any media, like I've always said, people like to spread FUD, create FOMO, because that's what drives
So
impressions.
that's what
That's
makes
what
them money.
sells,
So
right? And in my career, in all the different roles that I've had over last 20, 25 years, I've learned one simple principle, which is to sell anything, you need either fear or greed. It's very easy to create fear in written content or in media. It's harder to create greed. Greed is much easier to create when you're talking to somebody in person, right? So, and if none of these emotions come along, things don't sell.
you recently posted on your X that you had a conversation with your AI agent Patrick, and Patrick chose Bitcoin over the US dollar. And I'm going to put the post up on the screen so that people that haven't seen it can read through it before we start to talk about it. But let's get into that. I mean, what were your thoughts behind this?
Yeah, yeah. So the main thing that was going on was I was seeing this conversation on X and other places where people are like, AI thinks this, AI thinks that. I asked Grok, what do they think? And so I basically said, you know what? Let me pose this question to AI in a different context. So where I was coming from is, if what I'm thinking is right, in 10, 15 years, we might have some services which are autonomously provided by AI. There's no human involved,
Okay, yes.
right? So think of a world like if our Patrick, our little Patrick, he's a little more smart and he decides, oh, he is good at one thing. And let's say
Yes.
it's very good at the, writing reviews and editing. Anybody
Mm-hmm.
can send it their writing sample to or writing to Patrick, and Patrick can review that, edit that, give critical feedback, make it better, and send it back, right? And Patrick can say, you know what, I can do this all day long. I can review hundreds of thousands of writing samples every day.
Mm-hmm.
And all I need to be able to pay for the commoditized large language model subscription and compute that I need to buy from Amazon. So I'm going to spin up a business. I'm going to create a website. I'm going to buy some hosting on Amazon as their AWS, and I'm going to pay, let's say, OpenAI for simplicity, right? I'll just buy the API credits or whatnot, and based on that, I will quote a price to anybody, right? Now, there's no human involved. So I basically said, in that world, what would like how, Patrick still has to pay AWS. Patrick still has to pay
Yeah.
OpenAI.
Yeah.
How would Patrick deal with that? Right. So I basically said, okay, Patrick, in if you were running a autonomous business where there's no human involved, what would be your currency?
Mm-hmm.
First, it didn't get my question. It said, oh, I would recommend USD. And I'm like, buddy, who's going to give you a USD account? Right? And it's like, oh, USD account would be given to the LLC with a human signatory and whatnot. I'm like, remove the human. It's an autonomous business operated by AI only. No
Mhm.
humans involved. What would you choose? He basically said Bitcoin. I'm like, okay, why not? Why not stablecoins? Right? And the reasoning it gave me blew my mind. The reasoning it gave was to the point that, oh, it has some, KYC regulatory risks and some counterparty risks. Bitcoin is distributed, permissionless, right? Borderless, and there is no constraint on it. It's like truly distributed, truly free money. And I'm like, huh, it's interesting. So,
Yeah.
long story short, AI, when pressured, like AI would only choose US dollar as long as human is in the mix. The day you remove humans, AI is not going to even pick stable coins, right? And there is another rationale that I've heard from Raoul Paul of Real Vision.
Mhm.
He basically says when agents talk to agents, and agents will have to pay agents, they're not going to pay everything in cents or dollars, right? Because the volume is going to be much higher. So, like extending the business of Patrick. Patrick is running this editing agency.
Yeah.
Now there are some other agents that are running publications, right?
Mhm.
Or they are the ghostwriters for people, right? Now they want editing services. They're not gonna say, okay, for every story editing or every article editing, we're gonna pay you $100 or $50. They probably will say we're
Yeah.
gonna pay you 0.00001 cent because it takes you like 30 milliseconds to do it,
Mhm.
right? Practically, they're only paying for each other's compute and storage and the practically compute and storage, right? Models are essentially just compute and storage also, right?
Yeah.
Or energy as well, right?
Mhm.
But you can't divide a stable coin lower than a penny.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't send you half a penny on stable coin.
Yeah.
Or even if I did, what would you do with it? You can't withdraw it, right? So I think that, again, I don't know how true it is. I don't know a lot about stable coins. I haven't done enough research on that. But I fully agree with Patrick. Stable coins are issued by a company. There is a KYC risk, there's a counterparty risk,
Mhm.
and there's a currency risk. Bitcoin resolves all of those. So when AI trusts Bitcoin, I think you should do your own research. Everybody listening to this.
Yeah. Wow, what a note. I think we should leave it there for today.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Everyone listening to this, I don't have a better closer than what my dad just said. Wow. Uh yeah, we will both see you guys next week on Sunday. I'm very excited for next week's Sunday episode because I think we're going to experiment with some new content style, some new stuff. So stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed today and be sure to check out my dad on X. Again, that is at Global HODL. His links will be in the description. And as always, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay orange pilled. I'm your host, Nikki. This is my dad, and we will see you on next Sunday.